So, final week of October. Big exciting times of the month. All the leaves are collecting into a big leaf golem in my backyard. The jack-o'-lanterns I carved in over-eagerness in late September have turned to mush, and I've recarved new ones. And I've done my fair share of cozy reading with some warm apple cider. Things have been pretty good. I got my mug here of hot chocolate, which is actually just chocolate milk that I microwaved because I had no hot chocolate. So the moral of the story is we're doing the best we can. And to continue that idea, I ran into a bit of a snag this week. I was super excited to be able to talk about Mark Z. Danielewski's House of Leaves, a peak horror, as I've been told. But this peak is my Mount Everest right now. I have had such a hard time finding a natural rhythm to be able to read this book at a good pace at, and I've finally accepted defeat. I'll finish this book when I finish this book, and I'm not sure how long that's going to take. This unfortunate circumstance has provided me a new opportunity. I want to talk about some graphic novels. They're like normal novels, but they got fun pictures. We are in full Halloween week swing. I want to talk about my favorite autumnal season graphic novels, be it spooky or cozy or somewhere in between. That's what we're talking about today. Let's start with something that I read for the first time last week. It was actually the first purchase I've made based off of a booktuber's video, so that was kind of cool. The comic that I'm talking about is called Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell and Faith Erin Hicks. This comic is really good at capturing the autumnal season vibes in just the art. I was enamored before I even read a single word on the page. The story follows two friends, Deja and Josiah, who only see each other when they work at this pumpkin patch during October. They are working the last Halloween of their high school careers before they go off to college the next year. And because of that, they decide that it's time to change some things up. They go on an adventure around the pumpkin patch, eating s'mores, taking hay rides, getting lost in a maze, being chased by an angry goat. All the while, they're trying to find this girl that Josiah's been crushing on for years. The writing in this comic is snappy, and it's funny, and it's heartwarming, but I must warn you that there is a ton of good-looking food in this comic. You should probably bring some snacks for your read-through. The story is nice and compact. You could probably finish it in about an hour or two. And that's nice because it keeps you in this world for the entirety of the experience. You're not setting the book down and taking a break and then coming back to it. You're in this pumpkin patch for the whole time. I definitely recommend it if you're not into the super spooks, but you still want to have some kind of autumnal orange and red and yellow vibes. Or even if you want to read it in November, after Halloween. I mean, what is November but just Halloween Part 2 for those autumnal vibes? You can keep your pumpkins out. Just get rid of the carved ones. Pumpkins are pumpkins. But I would definitely recommend this comic to anyone who's just looking for some happy, lighthearted, good vibes. Now to pivot entirely, but to keep this single volume theme going on, we have a Neil Gaiman special. A Study in Emerald is based on the Sherlock Holmes story, A Study in Scarlet. It is so hard to describe this comic to people without spoiling it in the worst ways possible. If it were up to me, I think this graphic novel should only be discovered by people who are merely piqued by the name Neil Gaiman and see the idea that it's referencing Sherlock Holmes and have zero other knowledge going into it. They find it on the shelf, they pick it up, they read it. If we were to rely solely on discovery and no recommendations, I fear that this book would be missed by so many people that it's meaning to get into the hands of. And so here we are. This is a mirror to A Study in Scarlet in many ways. Ra's is written on the wall, there was a murder, the great detective and his right-hand man are on the case. But this is a universe where the royalty of the world, I'm talking the Queen of Spain, the Queen of England, the Tsar of Russia probably, all of them. All the royal bloodlines are of the old ones. Tentacled, everlasting, hungering old ones. And that's all I'll say. It's even shorter than Pumpkinheads, so please go read this graphic novel. It's so worth it, I promise you. I can't say much more about it. It's definitely spooky, and it's definitely a good mystery comic. Please go check it out. Now this next one, I've debated on putting on this list for a little while now. I finally decided, yes, I'm going to do it. But it's a big meme. Despite not totally hitting any of the requirements that fit on this list, Batman's The Long Halloween is a work of art above a lot, if not most, graphic novels. The art, the writing, the Batman, all of it is at its peak in this story. And yes, maybe it's only on this list because the name is The Long Halloween and I wanted to find an opportunity as early as possible in my booktube career to be able to talk about this comic. So what? I want to talk about this comic. And hey, there are a few scenes with some pumpkins in them, so theming. And let's be real, any good standalone Batman story is going to have gothic elements no matter what. This story is looking at the noir side of the world's greatest detective. Jeff Loeb does an amazing job of making the mystery and the story so compelling here, and the important fact that this is a superhero comic so not important. It introduces a lot of the characters that you're familiar with from Batman stories. You're gonna see Catwoman, you're gonna see the Riddler, you're gonna see Calendar Man, Alfred, Batman, all your classics. But if you just have passing knowledge of them, you'll be able to push past the fact that this is just a superhero comic, because the focus isn't on the superheroes or the supervillains. The focus is on the mystery that's being solved. And I think this comic is able to pull off the mystery style really well while not leaning so heavily on the fact that you need to know who Batman is to be able to love it. So if some, I don't know, some cold rainy nights roll around, maybe you should whip this comic out. I doubt you'll be disappointed in it, even if you don't like Batman. Alright, let's start diving into some of these longer recs. All the comics I've given you so far are single volume books, full story, front to back, done. Here's the first of the serialized comics that I would recommend. Joe Hill's Lock and Key, I picked up on a whim. I saw that it said Lovecraft on it, and I figured I had to buy it. I had no prior knowledge to who Joe Hill was, I had no prior knowledge to what Lock and Key was, I had no clue what this story was about. Years later, after I had bought this, it turned into a Netflix series, and I still hadn't read it, but finally, I've read it. And oh boy, is this a good one. After the horrifying murder of their father, 3 children and their mother flee the state to their father's childhood mansion in Lovecraft, Massachusetts. While exploring the house, the kids begin to find these keys that have a multitude of powers, and as they begin to collect them, they slowly unlock way more of a mystery than I was ready for. Now, the art for this comic is both the best and the worst part about it. There are scenes that are just downright chilling with the horror that is on the page, and it's so well done. And then, there are other scenes where it's also chilling, but here I'm using that to describe how horrifying the artist decided that these normal humans were gonna look. Like, some panels have monstrosities, and then other panels also have monstrosities, but that's just how that human dude looks. It's quite funny to see sometimes. Even one of our main characters can look like a big angry gorilla man who's like 45 years old, even though he's only 16. So some of the character design choices I'm not super on board with, but I do think that the overall art style is still really well done. And the story slaps hard. This is Joe Hill writing it, Stephen King's son. I don't like holding him to his father's name, as I suspect he doesn't based on the fact that he changed his name, but the writing talent is there. And it's also not lost on me that the son of Stephen King wrote about 3 kids who are dealing with a parent with substance abuse problems. This book is grotesque at times. It touches on a lot of real horrors behind the fantastical. Home invasions, alcoholism, PTSD. A warning to those who have triggers that fall into those categories, as this series might not be too great for you. But I love this series, and I wholeheartedly recommend it to anyone who's looking for something fantastical and gothic and horrifying all at once. The next series is incomplete, and I fear that it will never be completed, but I need to put it on here because it's just so good. The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina is amazing. It's the perfect spooky season read. This is a dark origin for Sabrina the Teenage Witch. I really love the watercolor art style that is used in this comic. The setting for the story is the 1960s, and the art is able to convey that by having this sepia tone wash over all of the panels that make it a really unique and distinct reading experience. I'll be honest, when I was young, the only experiences I had with Archie comics were the Halloween specials about the vampire invasion and the couch potatoes, so I just assumed that Archie was just a long-running set of fantastical horror stories, and not a slice of life as it turns out to be. So getting comics like this and Afterlife with Archie were a small niche content that I didn't know was made specifically for me. Neither of these, the Archie or the Sabrina comics, are complete, but they are really good Halloween fun. Some great witches, some great zombies. If you like any of that, I'd say get on this content. The last one I got here is the biggest mix-up to my expectations that I've had when going into reading something. It's Scooby Apocalypse. Scooby Apocalypse is a modern take on your classic Hanna-Barbera favorites, but this time they're being tossed in a real survival horror experience. The whole gang is battling against a nano swarm infection that's turning people into real monsters. The writing is weaker than I'd like it to be, I'll admit, but the art and the ideas and the drive behind this comic really made me enjoy it a lot. I love Scooby-Doo. It is by far my favorite media giant. I've absorbed all media that has had Scooby-Doo in it. Honestly, I think this fresh look at Scooby and his friends was really well done. The character designs are obviously completely different than what you would expect from the 1960s Scooby-Doo, or even something newer like Mystery Incorporated. But the core spirit of these characters is still there. It's still just Scoob and Shag. Seeing them reimagined in horror like this, making them deal with the real problems that they have to deal with, and not just another money laundering fraud scheme by some man in a gorilla mask, was really awesome to read about. They're dealing with much darker tones in this than even some of their real monster movies, except maybe Zombie Island, because that's still spooky to me. We see them kill monsters who were once real people, and we see that they are questioning their own morality because of that. It just gives a lot of depth to these Scooby-Doo characters, and I think that's really interesting. This is the longest recommendation I have by far. It's 6 full volumes of trade paperbacks. It probably isn't for everyone, but if you like Scooby-Doo, I think you'll find this super enjoyable. I know I did. So there it is. A bunch of autumnal comics just ready for consumption. Later this week, we're going to be looking at some October vibe short stories, so please subscribe and hit that bell if you haven't to be notified when that's going to go up. And if you like this content, hit that thumbs up button and comment below what your favorite spooky October comic is. Thank you so much for watching this, and I'll catch you next time. Stay lit.